All right, let's now talk to Lake Lewis Jr., Commanders Insider for ABC News. Lake Lewis Jr., thank you for being on the show with us, our last show of 2023, so we had to talk some Niners Commanders. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I appreciate you guys having me on, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you as well. So this broke a little over an hour ago. I don't know how much information is out there with Jacoby Brissett. What do you know about the quarterback situation, his tight hamstring? Could they go back to Sam Howell? And just your thoughts of the Commanders deciding to bench Sam Howell and go with Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, I mean, Jacoby does have, I guess like a tight hamstring, and I'd be surprised if he doesn't play. And the reason why I say that is because it's an opportunity for him. He's basically getting a chance to audition, I think, alongside Eric Bieniemy and Eric Bieniemy's offense. So, if these guys can perform well together, Brissett and Eric Bieniemy, which they've done over the past two games in the second half, they could be here next year with under a new coaching staff. So I think he'll play. As far as the benching of Sam Howell, I was a little shocked because he's gone this long this year. He played every snap pretty much up until the last 2 weeks. And, there were games earlier in the year, guys, where, like in New York, for instance, against the Giants, where he was really struggling. And we were sitting up in the press box thinking, well, maybe this is the game they'll just, take him out the game, not so much to bench him, but to kind of just, get a spark in that particular game, but to kind of hide him because he was struggling, and they didn't do it. So then they go ahead and they do it a couple of weeks ago when the season is pretty much over. So it was a kind of a surprise to a lot of us that cover the team, but we understood why they were doing it, because they are trying to hide him and not totally have him go in the tank.
Lake, I think you can provide a really valuable insight for some fans here in Northern California, specifically when it comes just to the other NFC East opponents and those that will probably get in the Niners' way of potentially getting to another Super Bowl. What's been your view this season on the Cowboys and the Eagles, and just from your perspective of playing the Commanders? I mean, do you feel like they're a Super Bowl worthy teams, and from the Eagles perspective as well, like they're clearly not as good or as dominant as they were last year? What do you see as the cap for that team?
Yeah, I think as far as the Eagles are concerned, I think they're the only team I really truly believe in the NFC that poses a viable threat to San Francisco as far as having to go out there your way and win on the road. I think, because there's familiarity with them playing each other. Obviously, we remember the last time they played in Philadelphia right up the road from here. You guys came over there and demolished them. So obviously, I think that kind of knocked the edge off Philadelphia a little bit. Maybe I could even use the word arrogance because they were feeling pretty good about themselves. No pun intended, but they were flying high. And San Fran came in there and just beat them down, and ever since then you saw them lose to the Cowboys. But I tell people, right before the 49ers game, the Eagles had to come back and win an overtime game against Buffalo. So you already started to see a little bit of, kinks in the armor, and they were just fully exposed by the 49ers. But I think they're the best team to have a legitimate shot to go into San Francisco. And do I think they'll win there? No, I don't. But I think they would have the best shot. Dallas, to me, is just an offensive-laden team that if you lean on them a little bit, so to speak, they're just not as physical as far as offensively. They have a great defense, but that defense can't stop the run, and that's obviously what Christian McCaffrey does best. So I don't see anybody beating San Fran to get to the Super Bowl. I really don't.
If it's not going to be this season, Lake, I'm not sure when it will be. Talking to Lake Lewis Jr., Commanders Insider for ABC News. Lake, the Commanders looking forward to the future. The Commanders right now tied with the Patriots for the third pick in the draft. Is the obvious answer here that they're going to go with a quarterback, or is you talked a little bit about Jacoby Brissett and a possible tryout situation if he's able to go? Even if the Commanders take down the Niners, right? Is it basically assumed that the Commanders will go after one of these top quarterbacks in a fairly deep quarterback class?
See, I would say that it's not. And the reason why I say that is because when you're a bad football team like this team is, and you have a top pick, you have needs all across the board. I'm not so sure that Marvin Harrison Jr., if he does come out, isn't the best talent in the draft. He's that good. But then, of course, Caleb Williams is a great player who happens to be from D.C., so that's a marketing boom for a new ownership group. And then you of course, Drake May and then Kid Daniels just won the Heisman. I'm Penn State alum, so I like Fashanu quite a bit as a left tackle. I think he's a generational talent at that position. And if you want to go that route, that has to be because you're pretty certain of who you have on your roster at the quarterback spot. So if you would ask me that right now, truth serum, I would say they may be looking at a quarterback as a fresh face. But it just depends on how these last two games, are played.
Lake, I was curious. I mean, earlier this year, the Niners did make a move with Washington to bring over Chase Young. What were your thoughts on that move, and what were your thoughts also just on Chase Young's career up until that point? Kind of, I know he dealt with some injury history, but had a pretty decent rookie season. Was obviously taken pretty high in the draft. Just what were your thoughts on that move and Chase's career up to that point?
Well, half of us here in town were split on that. Some were happy to see him go, and then guys like myself thought it was a bonehead move, to be honest with you, because, when you're not that good, sometimes you put an onus on some of your players that clearly have more talent than others to do too much. And the problem I had with the trade of Chase, as well as Montez Sweat, the other defensive end at the time, was they were playing in a pretty bad system, pretty bad, antiquated defensive scheme under Jack Del Rio. And it just didn't utilize their strengths. These guys are kind of guys that are, uber athletic, so they can do a little bit more freelancing around. And Jack didn't like that. They hated it, actually. And they just wanted them to play from within a certain position, a certain box. They lined up, hands down in the same spot every single play. So, of course, opposing offenses, these offensive coordinators today are just geniuses. They schemed around them, and it made them kind of, non-effective. So I was upset with it. And then on top of that, you trade them to a team that's in your conference that if you ever are going to be any good, you're going to have to go through. And then on top of that, you trade them to a team that already has two other Vipers. One's a friend of mine, Trent Williams, that were already PO'd to be, out of Washington. So now come Sunday, it's going to be three former Washington guys that are, they've got hell to pay.
Yeah, I definitely, and there's going to be a nice homecoming there as well. It's going to be, I think even if the game is whatever, there'll still be some good storylines, which is what we always look for. Lake, just a couple more for you. It's been great stuff so far. Thank you for joining us, talking to Lake Lewis Jr., Commanders insider for ABC News. Lake, what would be your guess? We're really digging into the crystal ball with you for the future of the Commanders. What happens with Coach Ron Rivera? And I think it's more interesting what the heck happens with Coach Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, well, I can tell you right now, Black Monday comes, it's going to be a full swipe. Everyone on the coaching staff will be let go. There's no question about that. As far as Eric, maybe I should say everyone and Eric has a chance, but I'm at the point right now where I feel like Eric will be let go as well. And I just think that they're going to go and start this thing over from the ground up. And, again, if they go out and catch lightning in a bottle and they beat the 49ers and they beat the Cowboys, let's just say the Cowboys, still have a game to play for as far as their positioning, or maybe even an outside chance to win the NFC East division, which was eerily similar to last year. The final game of the season was against the Cowboys, and it was Sam Howell's first start, and the Cowboys played all their starters, through three quarters. So it could be a situation like that. And if they play well and get a win or two with Jacoby Brissett, it really changes the narrative on Eric Bieniemy. But as of now, guys, I think, I know 95% of those guys will be gone on Monday, the day after the season ends.
Interesting. So, like, I mean, you kind of had a good perspective on Eric Bieniemy this season. What do you think has just gone wrong with his search to finally get that head coaching spot? I mean, it felt like, when he was in Kansas City, obviously that's a name that's going to get thrown into just about every head coaching job, but he never ended up getting it, and almost felt like he had to move to Washington just to get away from the attachment to, oh yeah, he's good, but he has the Chiefs offense. Anyone could be good with that. What was your view this year kind of Eric Bieniemy, and do you think that he should eventually get that head coaching job?
I mean, that's a great question. And, I'm one of the guys here in town here because I'm pretty cool with Eric. And, we've talked after games before on what they need to do and do better. And, the problem has been, kind of self-inflicted at times by Eric because he doesn't run the football a lot. And Brian Robinson is a really good young running back that's more of a physical guy that could have helped your young quarterback. Well, they didn't run the ball a lot, but I always tried to forewarn people, not, up until maybe the last year or two in Kansas City with Pacheco, since they got him last year, they didn't really run the football a whole lot in Kansas City.
Right.
If you look at the numbers, they clearly were a pass first team, pass second team, pass third team, if you look at the numbers. So, I think that was a problem. The other thing is that I think people have to now give him the benefit of the doubt in the fact that he basically was starting a rookie quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And you go from Patrick Mahomes, clearly one of the top 5 quarterbacks ever with the chance to go down maybe as the GOAT, so you have that kind of talent. And now you're basically hands-on training a rookie quarterback with, by the way, the worst offensive line in football. So, it's hard to get a fair, true assessment of what Eric can do if he had his guys in tow. And I think that's something that, Josh Harris, the new owner, they're going to have to take a look at, is that, this guy has had some success with the offense. I mean, it's clearly better than what it was under Scott Turner for the past 3 years, but it still could have been a lot better. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Eric, but I think he's kind of separated himself from the rest of the group that's been here for years. Those guys are gone. With Eric, will he be willing to come back as an offensive coordinator again? But the question is it depends on what kind of coach you're going to hire. Because, guys, if you hire an offensive mind,
right,
you don't want them clashing, and that won't happen. But if you hire – maybe McDonald from the Ravens, who's a defensive coordinator, maybe he says, hey, I'll keep Eric and let him continue to build the 2 quarterbacks that we have, and then you draft the offensive tackle. So lots of variables, guys, out there.
Yeah, and honestly, if you're Washington, hey, the fact that you felt like you had to come here, that doesn't really have anything to do with us, right? We got to do what's best, and we see this stuff happen in different careers, no matter what. Business is business all the time. Yeah, like I just thought about this as you were talking, because earlier in the season, if I'm not mistaken, there was a report, this is really early, I don't even know if the season had started yet, where some of the players had an issue with how Bieniemy was coaching them.
Yeah, that wasn't true. And I actually refuted it as soon as it came out.
Yeah.
Guys, I hate to say this, but there's a lot of, you guys know the business and you know the league. There's a lot of things that sometimes are asked to be put out for certain reasons.
Right.
And at that particular time, it's not just me, but a lot of folks who cover the team, but know people who cover, as far as in the building, so to speak, as far as other coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I talked to a lot of the frontline players at the time, including Sam Howell. And they were like, that's not true. If it is, it's not one of us. It's not, put it like this, if it happened, it wasn't a starting frontline player because no one owned up to it. Everyone ran away from it when it came out, except for Ron Rivera. He sat on it and said, yeah, somebody came to me, but he wouldn't say who. And a lot of us thought that was rather odd at the time for him to say that, considering this team's been horrible for how long. No, as I call them here on a segment I do, buns. That's what we call them.
Right.
No player who's never had success has any legs to stand on to say someone's coaching them too hard. especially a guy that's coming from the defending Super Bowl champions. And the next day, you guys saw what happened. All the Kansas City guys, I mean, Mahomes, Kelsey, even Tyreek Hill, Miami, they all came out and said, no, this guy's a great guy, great leader. He's made me a better man. So it was just odd, but I think there was some jealousy already starting to swirl, and that's the kind of stuff that we deal with here in Washington.
Wow. Well, look, Lake, I hope it turns around for you. I hope you either package that pick or do whatever you got to do to get Washington back on the right track. I have some friends out there as well, some Commander fan friends, and I'm wishing you the best. Lake Lewis Jr., Commanders and NFL insider for ABC News. Lake, this was great. Let's do this again in the new year. Thank you so much, and happy holidays. Happy New Year.
All right. I appreciate you guys for having me on. Anytime, just let me know.
All right.
Awesome.
You got to get to a break. When we get back, it's 12:23, which means it's time for Kings Talk.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. And the round table is upon us with Brendan Nunez and Frankie Cardicelli. Stiles and Watkins, Sactown Sports.